Hello and welcome to this episode of How Round Is Your Roti? And today we'll be focusing on money mindset. This is an area I really wanted to cover because it can be a tough subject for South Asian women, especially traditionally when money has been controlled by men in our families. So perhaps growing up, we didn't see women making very many financial decisions, and this can impact how we feel and use money today. I wanted to speak to someone who has experience in this area. So today I'm joined by Jaskiran, who is the founder of Finance Therapy and a financial well-being expert. Hi, Jazz.
Hi, Priya. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, as I said in the introduction, money can be a really tricky subject, especially sometimes with family, even close friends. It can be a taboo topic that we don't often share how much we earn or what we do with our money. I've experienced some money mindset issues, but for anyone who isn't familiar, what would you say is money mindset?
Yeah, so essentially it is just like the mindset you have when you're dealing and thinking about money. So if we think about mindset in a general kind of sense, it's how we think, how we feel, and how we behave with a certain thing or object, be that in your relationships, be that with food, with exercise, and then of course with money. And so one thing around money is it's developed with all of our relationship to it is developed with all of our developmental behaviors, which are usually set by age 7. And so our mindset around money is very much shaped in the early years of our development. And that's not to say that you can't change it. It just means that the way that you feel about it, the way that you relate to it, a lot of that has come from a time before you ever really had money yourself, and before you really understood its function. And that's because, between 0 and 7, we're just sponges. We basically soak up everything around us, and that's how we learn about how the world works. And so if you think about, 0 to 7, what was shaping your mindset around money, it will be your parents, your caregivers, the system you grew up in, the society, the culture, the traditions that you saw, the conversations you heard in the household about money. Did you hear your parents arguing about money? Did you never hear any conversations about money? Were you encouraged to think about money yourself? Did you have a piggy bank? Did you we used to have like when I was born in the 90s. So they used to have the little books. And so I always got to see my little book whenever my mum went to the bank and got an update in it. And they used to go in and pay actual cash in, and then it goes to debits. And my siblings will now have things like stocks and shares ISAs, like junior ISAs. And then it's like, were you involved in that process? Did you save birthday money and take it to the bank and do that? Or did you spend it? Did you get pocket money? And all of these things will determine how we think and feel and understand money and systems of money in adulthood. And then, of course, other things will kind of shape that through our lives, the places we went to school, the people we were around, the universities we went to or didn't go to, the jobs and the environment. Our environments change so much between kind of high school and your first job. And we go from being around everybody our own age to all of a sudden being in an environment where people are of different ages, races, cultures, stages in their lives. And you go from having all teenage friends to having friends with families and children and mortgages. So all of those things will continue to shape your, I guess, mindset around money, but more in the sense of like your goals, because you'll start to see what's around you and you'll start to aspire to those things if they feel aligned with you. But generally, that's kind of what your money mindset is.
That's a lot there. That's a lot to unpack right there. And it also makes me feel a bit nervous because I have a 7-year-old, and then just thinking that she has, a money mindset without really dealing with a lot of money. I mean, they do have a little piggy bank. They save some birthday money, and right now she's learning how to count money and dealing and getting change from money back. So to think that actually she's forming her money mindset right now makes me feel really self-conscious about how I speak to her about money. For myself, we did similar things when we were younger. So I had that piggy bank. My mum used to go to the bank with the book and put in, and I used to feel really proud that I was saving. And I don't know if you see this in your clients, but I am more of a saver and risk adverse. And I haven't been involved in, say, stocks and shares, like you mentioned, the junior stocks and shares. I haven't done that for my kids yet either, but it does seem as if there are more avenues available to women. And I suppose as my generation now, similar to you, we're working now, we have some disposable income, but yet I don't hear of many people, whether they are or not, growing that income or investing because it seems quite risky. Um, and going back to that money mindset, how can women get to know that money mindset? How can they get to know that, if speaking for me, how do I know if I've got issues with my money mindset? I think previously I have, but if someone wanted to learn more about that, what's a good way for them to start learning?
Yeah, so the same as you learn about anything about yourself, I think we often try to move straight to action and we see something we don't like and we try to change it without really building awareness of why it's happening in the first place. And whether you've been to therapy or not, and yes, my business is called finance therapy, but it's because I really do focus on, money and mental health and all of the other kind of deeper things that impact the way that we behave and feel about money. And we as humans, we act with our emotions first, right? We have two systems in the brain, the emotional and logical. System one is the emotional brain, and that is what we always go with first. And if you are finding yourself making emotional decisions around money or feeling very emotional around money, like that's normal. We all do. And if you want to understand where that's coming from, the first thing is to be like I guess, shame-free for yourself and be able to observe what you do without judgment. And that's really hard, right? We don't like to give ourselves grace. We don't like to um, give ourselves an easy time. We like to be hard on ourselves. But my advice would always be just watch yourself for a week or even a month, like depending on how much the activities in your life fluctuate. If your weeks are the same week to week, you're in a pretty stable routine, a week is usually enough. If you have you're an entrepreneur, for example, and your life is never looking the same week on week, then maybe do it over a period of a month and really just, I don't know, get a journal or an online journal or something and observe your actions and start to understand what are the things that make you feel a certain way. And so I would call these your triggers. So being able to say when this happens to me, when somebody says something mean to me, or when I get paid. I feel and understanding like what do I feel? Just stop and observe that moment and say, how am I feeling in this moment when I get paid? And then starting to unpack like why do you feel that way? And is it because you've been stressed about bills for the last month and now you know that they can get paid? Or is it you've been waiting to buy something and now you've been waiting till payday and you told yourself you could do that on that day? Whatever it is, just write it down and don't judge yourself. Just note it. If you feel excited, happy, sad, whatever it is, what we like to do is put guilt on that, right? Like money is a huge motivator, but none of us want to say that we're motivated by money, right? Because we sound greedy. So just accept whatever it is, because many of us have the same traits around money. We just don't talk about it because it's taboo. Once you've done that and you've identified, okay, the trigger point, when this happens, I feel, then look at the next thing. What did you do? So maybe at the end of the day, it's payday, you felt whatever, you went and did whatever. Write it down. What did you do? And then after that week or month, you can basically look at that whole kind of picture and say, "Oh, okay, these are my triggers around money. This is how I feel about money. When I feel a certain way, I act a certain way. So if someone said something mean and said my hair looked bad today, and I went and bought a dress to make myself feel better, maybe you impulse spend when you feel bad about yourself when somebody says something mean about you. And then you can start impacting that with building better habits. And you can say, actually, I don't want to go and spend money on clothes that I never wear, or I wear once and then put in landfill or sit in my cupboard taking up space, right? And you can say, okay, it's just like an easy one, just because so many people say these examples to me. You can say, okay, instead of that, when somebody says something sad to me, I'm going to go and take myself out for a walk, or I'm going to call a friend that I haven't spoken to in a while and just have a nice chat. Put something in there that's going to make you feel good about yourself without adding detriment to your financial situation or without doing something that you are then going to regret and feel guilty about later. Because I've never once regretted picking up the phone and talking to my best friend, but
Yeah,
I've regretted some of the things I've bought, that's for sure.
that's true. So, Jess, you mentioned culture and tradition earlier. How can that impact our mindset as well and how we're behaving?
Yeah, so I mean, we're obviously both South Asian, so maybe I'll keep it in that context, and it applies to many different cultures. But in our culture, for example, we use money as gifts often. You know, we have so many festivals between kind of Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, like throughout the year, there are many, many festivals and opportunities to use money as a gift. Um, you might also see at our weddings, we like to hold money over people and throw money at the bride and groom. So if you've grown up seeing that, then you also understand the value of money in those spaces. But you know, we give money to the Gyanis at the Gurdwara, for example. It's given as an offering. We give money to the Gurdwara, and you know, like churches have things like tithe, and there's money is used in these systems of religion and culture and tradition. And that also shapes how we feel about it, right? Because we start to feel a obligation in some aspects around like how we contribute and how our money contributes to our community. We also are often raised with a lot of values around taking care of other people,
Yeah,
especially as women.
yeah, especially.
So that can often look like a financial, like an expense, right? Like, you know, some people might see it as a burden, some people see it as a privilege to be able to help. Whatever your view is on it, that is often then dictated by what your financial situation is at the time, right? If you can't afford to do something you feel obligated to do, you see it as a burden. If you can more than afford it, it's easy to say, oh, it's a privilege to be able to help people. It's like, yeah, if you're not struggling financially, sure, it's a privilege. But those things shape us and then they can create a lot of senses of guilt. Because if it's something you've been doing and seeing your grandparents do, your parents do, you've been doing it since you were a child, and then you are in a position where you can't financially afford to do that by yourself anymore, we often start to feel guilty because we're told that these are our traditions, they're our cultures. Um, Other things around that. I mean, I'm not married, but you're married, you are married. But I know that, you know, we had a dowry system as women. I grew up believing that I was a financial burden because my wedding would need to be paid for. And lucky for my parents, I have still decided that they don't need to pay for that because I'm not doing it. So,
You
obviously times have changed. But yeah, like, yeah, do you
you
want to?
say that, but so my wedding, just to give a bit of background, I got married probably 11 years ago, and it was one of those big fat Indian weddings, and I'm the eldest in my family, so my dad wanted to go all out, and it wasn't up to me who was on the guest list. He chose the venue, he chose the caterers. It was very much this is him giving away his daughter. So we were very traditional in that aspect, and the guest list was like over 500 people. And my in-laws were really great in saying there's no dowry, right? So now we're moving on. It sounds like the conversation's moving on. And no, we don't want gifts. We don't want things from your family, which sounds great. But also, I almost felt that the wedding in itself is a type of dowry, and the amount of cost and expense that came with that in itself. And the boy side generally just turns up to the wedding, and that was like my dad wanted to do that. He felt like it was his responsibility, and he took that on. And financially, he was able to do that as well. I think in the back of his mind, like he has four daughters, so he's been saving for a long time, and the biggest expense he'll have is probably our weddings. And my sister got married last year, and he had the same mindset. And I was like, Dad, there are different ways to do things now. You don't have to do this. But for him, we couldn't change his thinking about it. That's what he wanted to do. But it didn't take away from that feeling of guilt from me or my sister that actually it's such an expense and it's eye-watering expense. I thought you can use that money elsewhere. So I think for my generation, I've got two daughters. My husband and I have had conversation. We just thought we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that type of thinking. They'll have a choice of a wedding, and we're going to try and be as sensible as we can, and we will be ruthless with a guest list because the day will mean a lot more than just showing off. Because I think traditionally in Punjabi culture, it has a wedding's been look at us, look what we can do, and I'm hoping that kind of thinking will get become outdated. Yeah, but there were so many. I could unpick, being older and
Mm.
having gone through it, I could unpick the money mindset things that were going on around a wedding. So,
Yeah. Were you able to enjoy your wedding?
I think I was glad when it was done.
On the record, I think that says it all.
It was a spectacle, and I tried to enjoy. I enjoyed. being with my husband and enjoyed seeing friends and family. So being there was really important to me, but the rigmarole around it, and when I look back, I was like, why did I spend that much money on a lehenga?
Mhm.
That I've worn twice now, and it's sitting in the loft. Why did I spend that much on jewelry? Did we really need to do favors for all the tables? And there were things like that when my sister got married, I was like, please don't do that, don't do that. But again, when every bride goes through it, you get stuck into this whirlwind of weddings and you have to have this and this. And I think it's something that brides go through it unless they're very aware of their money mindset and very aware of what they want from their wedding.
Yeah.
And I
And
hope women get to that point where they can think clearly and not get so wrapped up in the whole industry that it is.
yeah, and like even women getting married now, like when I tell people what I do, they consciously or unconsciously tell me all of the things around money. And I'm like, I love that. I love that I can be a safe space for people, but it's like, it's why my hair's so big. It's full of secrets. But I've had so many, younger women who are brides now or have been brides in the recent past. And it's always the lehenga they regret.
Mhm.
Every single time. Why did I spend £5,000 on that lehenga? I can't wear it. It's too heavy. It sits in a bag. It takes up too much space. And I'm like, go put it on buy rotation. Somebody else will rent it from you and you can make money off of it like over and over. And they're like, what's that? And it's great because like, Ishita founded by rotation. It's like the world's largest shared wardrobe, and there's great things around sustainability, but also you can make money on that website off of these things, right? And people want to wear our lengas, and hopefully now women are starting to see that these costs are unnecessary. And I saw something on Simran Kaur Girls That Invest, her page yesterday. She's getting married, and she did a poll of like not a poll like a question which was like Indian girlies, how much have you spent on your weddings? And I saw like 1.1 million US dollars. There was some on there which were like 350,000 Australian dollars. And there was one which was, there were two of them specifically. One which was like, was against our will. It's what our parents wanted. And then it was like a lol. And then there was another one which said, it was a obscene amount of money also. And it said, but it's always been my parents' dream, and they have that emoji that kind of like braces itself. And I thought, if your parents' dream is the wedding, not your marriage, this is our money mindset, right? Like, and then it leads to this thing of starting your new life with your parents being able to have a level of control over you because they paid for this wedding. And we know Indians, right? Like, we're really good at holding that over the next generation. We're really good at Asian guilt, right? We call it Asian guilt for a reason. And when we use money to do these things that are our dream, they then turn into this feeling of control. And I'm not saying that this is in every case. Like, you may be very lucky and you have this amazing family and you have all of this wealth and you can use it. Fine, great, beautiful, do it. But if that's not the case and you feel like this level of control is going to feed over and spill into your new life with your new partner, then, we do have the option to stand up for ourselves. Women now, especially if you're living in the West, like I understand if you're living in India, it's still a very different situation. But if you're living in the West, you have more opportunities than we've ever had before. We are able to earn as much as men if we want to, or if, equality really exists in the sectors that we're working in. We have the opportunities to buy homes by ourselves, get credit by ourselves, get divorced if we want to. With no reason, divorces exist now, right? Like before, you had to fight tooth and nail. Our grandparents couldn't get out of a bad marriage. It was never an option. And all of these things impact what we think is money mindset. But of course, it runs so much deeper because we feel guilty. You might have the money to go, but you might say, I can never get a divorce.
Yeah, yeah,
So what we think is about money, it's not. It's the guilt about getting divorced. And why do we not want to get divorced? Because we don't want to shame our parents. Why don't we want to shame our parents? Because they spent all that money on the wedding, right? And it like all of these things, right? They invited 500 people to the wedding and now I'm going to get divorced.
mhm,
That is going to hang over you for the rest of your life. And so and this is why I always say, like, it's never about money. You think it's about money, but it's about all of the different systems that we've grown up in, all of the different control mechanisms that exist, right? The things that in our families are able to hold over us, the coercive control, the domestic violence, all of it, all of these things that are part of our culture, the things that we grew up thinking were normal, but you don't talk about it outside of the house, right? Because if you talk about it outside of the house, then women will start to realize, oh, wait, this is happening to all of us and it's not okay. So what do they tell women? You don't talk about this outside of the house. Don't tell other people our business. And then
I
they talk about shut 'em, right? Like, don't bring shut 'em on our family. Why? You're bringing shut 'em on our family with what you're doing inside these households, right?
Again, it's like you said, it's much more complex than money mindset. There's so
Yeah.
many different cultural aspects to this. I mentioned earlier about who makes the financial decisions in your household, and when you spoke earlier about children absorbing, before 7, they're absorbing like a sponge everything that's going on around them, including money, money mindset. And I think in a lot of houses traditionally, it was the men that made the decisions, and it was the men that earned the income, so they controlled the money, and it is a form of control. For me growing up, I could see it. I could see it. I was aware of it. I knew that, my mum, she looked after 4 girls. She raised us in the house. My dad earned the money, but there was always, she had to ask for money. She had to ask, can we do this? Can we do this? So at a very young age, I personally thought, I need to earn. I need to have income because income equates to freedom. And, so I was ambitious, and I think that was the reason because I thought if I'm in a situation, I need to be able to earn to get out of the situation. And it's a privilege that I had the education. I was able to go. I worked for a bank for 10 years. I earned that income. So that money mindset really played into my ambitions as I grew up. And now, as you get older, I still think about saving, saving, saving more than spending. I'm not sure if that's something that you see in your clients where they're a lot more risk adverse.
Yeah,
And
so I hate the words risk averse, and I'm a financial risk manager by trade. But it's because we as women see ourselves as, or we are told often, you're risk averse, you don't make good investment decisions, you don't, you need to take risk to take money, but we can have that mindset that investing is gambling, and all of these other like narratives that we hear around money. The other one is, like wanting money is greedy, right? Money is evil. Those kind of things also play into how we feel about it, which means that we don't, there are often things blocking us from growing wealth that we're not even thinking about, right? If you've grown up hearing money is the root of all evil, if you've grown up hearing things like you're greedy if you want money, or you heard your mom asking for money from your dad and he said no, and he might have said something along the lines of don't be so greedy, or whatever it is that you heard, those things are also inherently blocking you from growing your wealth from wealth, because so many people don't understand that, right? They don't understand that how does my money just make more money? They understand maybe the concept of interest, but
mm,
they don't maybe understand the concept of investing in companies because no one's given them that education. I've worked in banking, you've worked in banking. I did degrees in this. So of course I understood it from a very young age. But my mum and my parents' generation don't understand that. My grandparents' generation, absolutely not, like no chance. And the reason that often is, and why we are inclined to saving as immigrants, as families from immigrant communities, is that, well, I don't know, my grandparents came here. I don't know what, like, did your also your grandparents? They literally did come here with relatively nothing if you compare it to like today's value of money. And they lived in conditions which, you wouldn't even dream of. And they built a life here from absolutely nothing. Like we have never had it so hard. And then our parents saw that and they learned to save. And then we saw that and we say, okay, saving is how you build wealth. Because we watched our parents' generation scrimp and save and be able to afford houses, which were 8 times less expensive back when they bought homes in the 90s and early 2000s. And then we say, saving is how you build wealth. If I save, I can buy a home. Obviously, no, because our salaries haven't increased with the increase of house prices, with the cost of living. Our salaries haven't gone up as quickly. But we also have that mindset of if you don't save, you don't have security.
mm,
Saving gets me a home gets me a roof over my head. I won't be sent back to the country that, or whatever, I won't be homeless. And being homeless is shameful also, right? In our community. Like that's another sense of shame that we have. So, and why I say I hate risk averse is that we brand women as risk averse and say, this is your category, saving is the only option for you. And you go and speak to a financial advisor, and then all will say, "Oh, well, I'm risk averse. That's what I've been told I am." And so they'll say, "Okay, cool. We'll just put your money into high yield interest accounts, government bonds, whatever it is, safe assets." Women are aware, not risk averse. Women like to understand all of the risks involved. They want to know what's going to happen to their money. They want to know what it's going to mean for their security because they need that security. They need to keep a roof over their children's head, over their own head. Like they look after the family. They may not do it financially, but at the end of the day, they are responsible for the safety of their family. And so just because a woman wants to know all of the information before she makes a decision, it doesn't make her risk aware averse. It just makes her risk aware, which means that at the end of the day, you're going to make better decisions. Women, on average, are better investors. They make better investment decisions. They're better business owners. They run better businesses because they take less high risk, which is what does it do? It loses you money, right? Like I don't tell anyone, like, do not do day trading because you're never going to beat the trader at the bank who gets paid 150, 200K a year to to do this day in, day out, and you're going to do it off the side of your desk. But you can get educated. You can understand what these things mean. I think what we often, like when I speak to women and I do a bit of financial education and literacy stuff, they don't believe it's as easy as it is. They believe that there's something else behind it. It's like, oh, like this has to be a scam, right? Like it can't be that easy. And it's like, no, trust me, it is. If men are doing it, it's as easy. Right? Like, when have you ever seen a man try to do something in the household that seems hard, right? Like get them to load a dishwasher and then tell me that buying ETFs is difficult. So looking at those things and saying women are risk averse, it's like this another thing, a label that's been put on us. We don't have to accept it. We can literally say, no, I'm not. I'm actually smart. I'm risk aware. I like to have all the information. And the other thing you mentioned there around women not having control of the finances. So somebody came to my finance therapy circle recently and she mentioned like she felt like she had no control. She doesn't understand how the bills work. She doesn't pay for anything. And I asked, do you do the grocery shopping? And she said, yeah. So I was like, so you know the costs of the household. And this is what we don't realize, like 70 to 80% in like heteronormative relationships, women make all of the household financial budgeting decisions. They know how much the groceries cost. More often than not, they're paying the bills. They know what the water bill, the gas and electric bill is. They know what they pay for Sky or Virgin TV, whatever it is. They're just not making the long-term financial decisions for the family because that's where the man has kept control. But they know more about the running of the household, their budgeting costs, their incoming and their outgoing than the husband does. And we don't give ourselves credit for that. And this is like statistically accurate, like that's a fact. So I think, again, another mindset piece is empowering ourselves by saying, hold on, I do have control because I know everything about how this household runs. Like if you just switched off for a day, if you went away for a week, how would your household run? Like, just think about the mess that would be left.
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I suppose we do talk about finances. Like over the years, it's become more pertinent to talk about finances and what would happen. And we do like, worst case scenario, I'm not here, you're not here. What needs to happen? So I feel like between us, we realize the importance of having those conversations. And I did ask him on day, like he has control of the bills. So like that in that situation you had in your finance therapy circle, he knows the ins and outs of the bills. I know the ins and outs of the grocery shopping, the other ancillary bits and pieces that come on in our household. But it's really important that we're both aware so that
Yeah.
if the worst case scenario ever happened, we know what's going on and that we can take control if we need to. So I feel that money conversations are really important. And sometimes it's difficult having those conversations. When I first got married, I was like, okay, I'll tell you how much I earn, but by the way, I'm keeping this money to myself. And I really felt like that. I was like, no, I need this. And he was like, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. But I now do not have a salaried income. I would look after the kids, and that changed my whole way of thinking about money. And I became from someone who was very independent, working, had my own income, to not having anything and relying on him to look after. And that came with a wave of guilt as well. But I had to mentally work through that and say, no, actually, the work I do is valuable. And he had to also tell me the work you do is valuable, which is, was really strange, but sometimes you have to hear it and believe in it to then say, actually, no, it's fine. We can work this through. And that's why I think the impetus came from having those conversations.
Yeah.
Now I'm at a stage where actually we've got some disposable. I feel empowered more recently, only probably the last couple of years. And you mentioned Simran Kaur with Girls That Invest, and I've read that book, and it was really empowering and enlightening. And like you said, made everything seem much more simple than I thought it would be about investing. Um, so for someone else who's maybe looking to grow their wealth or just having more control of their finances and wanting to do more or learn more, do you know of where they could seek more support in that area? Obviously, without giving financial advice, 'cause we can't do
Yeah, yeah, of course. I can do like a listing of things that exist out there. I mean, one important thing is like what you exactly mentioned there is like understanding the value of what you bring
that.
is so important because, unpaid labor is raising children,
Exactly.
running the household. All of this is unpaid labor. It doesn't mean that doesn't have value.
Yeah.
Just because you're not getting physically paid for it, it doesn't mean not valuable. And understanding that also puts you in a better position for negotiating a higher salary. Like how many women never ask for more? And I have never once taken a job and not asked for more. And maybe that makes me an unlikable woman, but I refuse to be paid less than a man for doing the same job, right? So it's knowing your value and asking for more, I think is the best resource. Like if you're going to find resources, like go and Google how to negotiate a salary, how to 10x my pricing. If you're an entrepreneur, how do I price for like building this much wealth? And it's all about goals at the end of the day, right? Understanding where you want to get to, what you need personally in your life, and working backwards from that. And knowing those things will enable you to find resources beyond whatever I can list to you here, right? Because you might have listeners all around the world, and I can only really tell you what's relevant in the UK. But if you know what to Google, if you know what to put into ChatGPT, you will empower yourself. So my best tip to anyone is the best way to have more is to earn more because when you earn more, you can invest more. And then eventually your investments can be bringing you in an income if you want to learn about like financial literacy and pensions and all of the other things around like how do you invest, how do you build wealth, how do you even set good goals. There's a few different financial literacy apps in the UK. So there's Your Juno, there's Female Invest, and there's Propel, which is Prop L together. And then Propel actually is an investment platform as well. So you can do everything from financial education, find community, and then physically go and invest your money on it. Female Invest have like investing simulators inside their app, so you can like do pretend investing with fake money just to get used to it. Your Juno is kind of like a Duolingo, if you know Duolingo, the language learning app for money. So there's just like little courses, and you can click through and just do them on your phone on the app. And then the other side of that is like books. So you mentioned Girls That Invest. I think Female Invest also have one called Girls Just Want to Have Funds. I've not read that one. Um, there's also the Broke Generation, Edwards. She's the Broke Generation on Instagram. She just wrote a book, Good with Money. So that one's all around kind of mindset. And her page is really interesting because what she talks about is actually less about money itself and more around your behaviors that impact money. So she'll talk about things like energy efficient, like buying things to be more energy efficient, but how it saves you money. Or she'll talk about how like having no buy years. So how do you not spend money for a whole year? How do you not buy any clothes and like exposure therapy? So she'll often do videos where she's like, "Oh, I went shopping," and she tries all these things on, and then she walks out and doesn't buy anything. And like for a whole year, she won't spend anything. And those are all around, those things are really great in terms of like changing your mindset and building better habits because, a lot of us do impulse buy. And there's, that thing around waiting 24 hours or 48 hours, leave it in your basket and you realize you don't actually want it and understanding your emotions and triggers behind these things. But yeah, those are some really great resources that I really enjoy in the world. But of course, there's so many. There's so many people on Instagram talking about money and mindset. And I think if you just find somebody who speaks to what you are feeling, and that might change, over the years you'll have different needs. But yeah, hundreds of them on on Instagram these days.
Thanks for sharing, Jess. I mean, I think, even just as this conversation, we've gone through so many different areas, and there's a lot to unpack, and we've probably just scratched the surface of it. But that was a lot of great advice, and also signposting to resources that are out there. And I think the fantastic thing is that for women now, we there are resources that we can be empowered to make these financial decisions, take control of that money narrative. And like you said right at the beginning, the first step is awareness and just writing down and what comes up when I think about spending this or saving this, or those cultural obligations that we feel we may have. So I hope for anyone watching, listening, that they've gained something from this episode, and there's always a place to start. We'll all be on a different journey in different places, but there is a lot of support out there. So thank you for sharing today. It's been really great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I forgot to plug myself. So I'm obviously finance therapy on Substack, but I talk more around like money, mental health, a lot of these things around our culture. And if you want to hear more about me talking talking about all of the injustices in the world, you can find me on Substack through Priya's page.
Definitely, because I've
Mhm.
been watching and reading everything you put out for the past year, and it's fantastic. So I definitely encourage lots of people to do that. But thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Bye.